Queen of the African Sky. National Geographic, Volume 197, Number 5, May 2000. In a replica of a World War I era open cockpit biplane called the Silver Queen, 3 adventurers retrace the first air route from Cairo to Cape Town. June 24th, Cairo, Egypt. At 500 feet above a white-capped English Channel, rain danced on the wings and stung our faces. Our craft heaved in the low clouds and buffeting winds. The UK's Manston radar advised, "Mike Yankee," our call sign. "You are now leaving our area." Then the English voice came again. "Mike Yankee, I understand you are the Vickers Vimy, is that correct?" "Affirmative. We are en route to Cape Town." "Brilliant." The radio crackled with emotion, rarely heard from air traffic controllers. "Best of luck and Godspeed." As we fly over Egypt 3 weeks later, that cheery send-off echoes in my headset, but Godspeed seems unlikely. Cruising at 75 miles an hour, it has taken more than 40 hours of flying to reach Africa. Wind keens in 112 bracing wires and twin 350 horsepower custom-built BMW engines churn out their deafening drone. Behind my nose gunner's seat, wedged shoulder to shoulder in the cockpit, are Chief Pilot Mark Rebels, far left, and co-pilot John Lanau. Mark has 20,000 hours of flight experience as a jetliner captain and a passion for early aviation. John, a film set builder, led the construction of our plane, a painstaking replica of a World War I era Vickers Vimy. With a 68-foot wingspan, it is the world's largest airworthy biplane. Designed to drop bombs on European battlefields, the twin-engine Vimy was produced too late for wartime service, but soon showed its mettle as a long-distance flyer. In 1919, 2 British airmen made the first non-stop Atlantic crossing in a Vimy, and a pair of Australians claimed a £10,000 prize for the first England to Australia flight. To link its far-flung empire by air, the British government prepared runways with fuel caches every 100 miles along a route through Eastern Africa, after which London's Daily Mail newspaper offered £10,000 to the first aviators to reach Cape Town, South Africa, from England. In 1920, 5 teams accepted the challenge, including 2 South Africans, Pierre van Rhyneveld and Brand. Flying a Vimy named the Silver Queen, all 5 teams crashed. The South African wrecked 2 Vimys, leaving a crumpled Silver Queen 2 below in Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. Refusing to give up, they continued on to Cape Town in a 3rd plane 45 days after leaving England. Both were knighted, but van Rhyneveld and Brand were awarded only £5,000 since they had failed to complete the trip in their original craft. Our Vimy first proved its durability in 1994 when owner Peter McMillan recreated the 1919 England to Australia passage. Now Mark, John and I, after 3 years of scraping together funds and preparing to follow the South Africans' route down the length of Africa, are airborne. We carry electronics and detailed maps our predecessors didn't have. But we must still cross 11 countries and 2 war zones and contained with bush airfields, mountain ranges, limited fuel access, and winter in the southern hemisphere. We will likely need that Godspeed. July 12th, Ethiopia. Not quite dawn, already 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Unable to rouse air traffic controllers and without a valid flight clearance, Mark and John take off from Djibouti on July 4th, banking south toward Ethiopia in a hazy headwind. Heavy fighting between Ethiopia and Somalia dominated pre-flight discussions, with anxious talk of forced landings, hostage situations, and roads full of trigger-happy soldiers. To allow more fuel on board, I travelled ahead to Kenya, hoping luck will blow south. It doesn't. The Vimy reaches only 8,800 feet and covers less than 200 ground miles in 4 hours. Exhausted by arm-straining turbulence and relentless headwinds, Mark and John turned back. A week of faxes and sleepless nights later, they secure a flight clearance for July 12th. Again, the Silver Queen dodges headwinds, landing at Mandera, Kenya, after 8 numbing hours. Mark calls it the most demanding flight of my career. July 13, Kenya. "You are making history," said a grinning army officer, gesturing at the only airworthy Vickers Vimy in the world, now parked on his isolated base in northern Kenya. Word of our arrival spreads quickly through Mandera, a predominantly Muslim hamlet tight against the Somali and Ethiopian borders. That night, local pilots share their modest accommodations with us. At 5 the next morning, we find schoolgirls in billowing purple uniforms waiting by the Silver Queen, notepads poised, eager to learn about what they call our time machine. "We have heard of the Wright brothers," one says. "But what is this and why are you here?" Mark responds with an impromptu aviation tutorial. Everywhere the aircraft demonstrates its power to fascinate. Dodging stalks and potholes on takeoff from Mandera, we fly 8.5 hours to Nairobi's Wilson Airport. Despite being 2 weeks overdue, we are met by cheering crowds. The expedition's education team joins us in Nairobi. Selected in an essay contest, 5 students from 5 countries, the youngest 14 years old, the oldest 19, will follow the flight on the ground from Kenya to South Africa, led by tutors Mick Folari and Matt Bressler. Miriam Alube, a 19-year-old Kenyan, is the first student to go up in the Silver Queen. She lands crying, overwhelmed by the experience of flying in an open cockpit for the first time. By Lake Naivasha in the Great Rift Valley, the whole group joins friends and supporters at the home of elephant researchers Ian and Oria Douglas Hamilton for an evening of classic bush hospitality. But our lengthy delay in Djibouti has left us little time to relax. Next morning we set off again, scores of waving hands urging us skyward. July 16, Kenya. Saluting another large lumbering creature, the Vimy dips a wing to elephants browsing on the golden plains of the Masai Mara. With the stress of crossing war-torn Ethiopia behind us, we revel in peaceful flying. Zebras, gazelles and wildebeests roam just 1,000 feet below. We have had no trouble with our engines overheating since John cut away large pieces of the cowlings in Egypt. But the challenge of Kenya's high elevations remains. Taking off from central Kenya, we are confronted again with the Silver Queen's limitations and reminded that every flight is a test flight. Weighed with fuel, she refuses to climb in the thin air above a high elevation runway. Skirting treetops, Mark waits for fuel to burn off, noting in his log, too heavy if any obstacles. 3 hours later, we touched down on a grass strip in the Kyulu range of North Tanzania. Apprehensive Maasai examine us from a distance, and then, despite language barriers, are quickly fascinated by our craft. One drums gleefully on the fabric-covered fuselage. Detouring to Tanzania, Mark and John push the Silver Queen to 12,000 feet in the cooler air that wreathes snow-capped Mount Kilimanjaro. We are rewarded with a dazzling view of Africa's highest peak. July 19, Kenya. Near disaster strikes after the thrill of Kilimanjaro. A crosswind catches the Silver Queen's wings, and despite both pilots' quick reactions on the heavy controls, the starboard wing gouges into the dirt runway. We almost cartwheeled and rolled up into a ball, Mark says, slumping in exhausted frustration. The damage? A bent aileron control and another delay. We cannot afford to repeat our predecessors' misadventures. Rhyneveld and Brand wrecked 2 Vimys, one south of Cairo and another leaving Bulawayo in today's Zimbabwe. They finished their journey in the Voortrekker, a DH-9 borrowed from the South African Air Force. There is no second Vimy for us. And if a quick repair isn't possible, Mark will run out of leave from his job and have to abandon the flight. Morale low, weary to the bone. Mark and John head back to Nairobi in a friend's modern plane, hoping to find parts and locate fuel for the rest of the trip. I stay behind to secure our battered Silver Queen. 8 hours later, John returns, parts in hand. We are offered another night of Kenyan hospitality at the home, 3 hours walk from the airfield. The next morning, we trudge back through tick-infested grasses, crisscrossed by lion tracks, eyed by giraffes and antelope. With more ingenuity than equipment, John revives the plane he built. Having located a fuel cache in southern Tanzania, Mark rejoins us July 21st. Spirits lifting, we continue our southward journey. July 21st to 29th. I don't just bore holes in the sky, Mark tells me. I fly with a purpose. When he's not piloting people or cargo, he's trying to keep aviation history alive in the sky. The effort saps our bodies, but offers rewards we did not anticipate. We soar across earth-splitting Victoria Falls, at the very spot where in 1920 Quentin Brandt made the first aerial photograph of the 355-foot deep chasm. As we cross Tanzania's forests, scattered smoke plumes are the only signs of habitation. Turning onto a grass landing strip in Mbeya, we expect to find only a missionary pilot and his personal fuel reserve. But before our 11-foot propellers stop whirling, hundreds of children and adults pour onto the field, encircling the Silver Queen with Swahili cheers and toothy grins. Their enthusiasm buoys us through 3 days of dawn to dusk flying over Malawi and Zambia. From the Zambezi River, we race through western Zimbabwe, the setting sun on our tail. In Bulawayo, a marimba band and more than 2,000 well-wishers salute us, cameras flashing and champagne corks popping. A few in the crowd remember having seen the Silver Queen cut through the sky 79 years before. Grimy and worn, we sprint across South Africa in sub-freezing winter weather. As we near our goal, rain, hail and snow slash our faces, but the Silver Queen perseveres. On July 29, 1999, our Vimy at last sweeps across the shores of Cape Town. Epilogue. Thank you for keeping a wonderful era alive. Quentin Brandt's 76-year-old daughter Mary had said when our journey began, "In Zimbabwe, crowds swarm the Silver Queen as if she's not just a plane, but truly a time machine. A portal to the days when courageous aviators opened the skies. Air travel 1920 style offers few comforts. 58 days after leaving England, we arrive in Cape Town. Frozen, deaf, hungry, with distended bladders and windburned faces, wearing the same clothes we've had on for 9,000 miles. Yet, flying in the open cockpit Vimy gave us an intimate experience of Eastern Africa's peoples and landscapes that few have shared. My dear fellows, Pierre van Rhyneveld said in a radio interview 36 years after his flight, if you had been a millionaire, you could not buy an adventure like that.